All right, judges.
Okay. Hello, Illinois.
Hey, what's going on?
Hello.
Hey, my name is Thomas Mackey. I'm at the historian with the University of Louisville, as well as with the Brandeis School of Law here at the University of Louisville.
I am Hank Chambers. I'm a law professor here at the University of Richmond.
I'm Rita McCannon. I'm an attorney in Huntsville, Alabama. And I'm so glad to be here. Y'all go ahead. Sorry.
We are Unit 3 from Maine South High School, representing the beautiful state of Illinois. We're coached by Andrew Trankel and Kevin C. Hansen. I'm Kate Stewart, and these are my colleagues.
I'm Laura Pamilia.
I'm Omar Farag.
And I'm Erin Clark.
Very cool. As you know, Unit 3, Question 3. Let me read the question and then we can get started, eh? In 2020, we celebrate the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which recognized the right of women to vote. Despite recent controversy, the Equal Rights Amendment has not yet been declared ratified. What are the similarities and differences between these two amendments? What impact, if any, has the 19th Amendment had on women in achieving equality with men in the United States and around the world? What are the advantages and disadvantages of states passing their own equal rights amendments rather than ratifying a national constitutional amendment? You may begin.
While fighting for women's rights in Pakistan, Malala Yousafzai said, "I raise up my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back."
The 19th and Equal Rights Amendments share the goal of creating equality of opportunity for both men and women. They differed, however, in what they targeted.
The 19th Amendment empowered women to engineer political change through suffrage.
While the ERA sought to ensure women equal protection under the law. Both amendments began as a grassroots political movement driven by women, with the aspiration of true equality under the law. We can attribute the ratification of the 19th Amendment to suffragettes whose work included the Declaration of Sentiments and Women's Suffrage Procession of 1913, expanding the national electorate by more than 10 million.
Growing from the success of the Anthony Amendment, activists Alice Paul and Crystal Eastman proposed the Equal Rights Amendment in 1923 to help women achieve equality in all aspects of life. In the 60s, women like Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem advanced the progress of the ERA through the second wave of feminism.
Some argue that because we have the 19th Amendment, the Equal Rights Amendment is not necessary. However, there are significant differences between these two amendments.
The 19th Amendment fully provides women with political equality. In contrast, the ERA upholds gender rights for both women and men by preventing discrimination based on sex. Passing the ERA would raise protections for gender rights from intermediate scrutiny to strict scrutiny.
Furthermore, the ERA would be a tool of both legislation and litigation to enhance the protections of gender in areas such as reproductive rights and salary equity, all issues the 19th Amendment doesn't address.
As detailed by constitutional scholar Akil Ridamar, the sheer volume of new voters enfranchised by the 19th Amendment made it the single biggest democratizing event in American history. Through suffrage, women applied political pressure on Congress to pass legislation, further helping them achieve equality with men. As a result, Congress passed the Equal Pay Act in 1963, declaring it illegal to pay a woman less for doing the same job as a man.
Yet, the 19th Amendment's effects extend beyond purely voting equality. The right of women to vote for office also implies the right of women to be voted into office, a development that inspired a global women's movement. In the decades after 1920, countries began passing universal suffrage, and women such as Margaret Thatcher and Angela Merkel became elected leaders of their nations.
Federalism can either be a tool to facilitate improvements in equality or a way to block social progress. A state-by-state approach paved the way for the 19th Amendment. It can do the same for the ERA.
States such as Illinois have an ERA section in their state constitution, and the short-term results of those states invalidate Phyllis Schlafly's criticisms of a national ERA, similar to how the success of suffrage in Western territories disputed stereotypes of women's ability to make important decisions.
In this way, states can be laboratories for democracy, yet this comes with challenges. Allowing each state to decide, not all will pass the ERA. States like Alabama and Missouri have been resistant to some progress in gender equality and may undermine the amendment rather than promote it.
In 2019, Alabama passed House Bill 314, which does not allow abortions to mothers in cases of rape or incest and imprisons their doctors for 99 years.
The Declaration states all men are created equal, but this did not include women.
Our progress towards gender equality has been the paradigm of 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
The opportunities facilitated by the 19th Amendment infused our nation with unprecedented fairness, but that is because our constitutional standard for gender equality was low to begin with.
The Equal Rights Amendment advances our pursuit of equality by explicitly addressing disparities of employment, recognition, and opportunity that women carry with them to the ballot box.
Today, let us honor each woman who continued to fight in the face of adversity, for nevertheless, she persisted. Thank you. We are now open for questions.
Cool. Interesting. This is one of those sort of evergreen questions that the Americans face every now and then, and we're back at it, I think. Let me ask the question and ask you to think about the relationship between the 19th Amendment, ERA perhaps, but the 14th Amendment, and more particularly the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. We have the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, therefore ERA is superfluous, is it not? Or help me understand how you think about the relationship between the 14th Equal Protection, ERA, and 19th.
Of course. We can see in the case of Reed v. Reed that equal protection was not implemented. The point of the ERA is to raise women equality and male equality to the same standard. And we can see that legally, women are going to be raised to strict scrutiny or gender, moreover. But with the 14th...
But the 19th Amendment says sex, not gender.
Excuse me, sex, I'm sorry. But with the 14th Amendment, that was engineered right after the Reconstruction era, same with the 13th and 15th. And now we can see today with governments not fully implementing equality with males and females that we actually do need the ERA.
Most certainly, I think when thinking about the 14th Amendment, you have to take into account the doctrine of intent. The 14th Amendment originally was placed to prevent racial discrimination. In the slaughterhouse cases, the Supreme Court ruled that both 13th and the 14th Amendment only prevent against discrimination of black civil rights. Now, the court has expanded its interpretation, and when you mentioned the 14th Amendment for gender, Craig versus Bourne in 1976 established the intermediate scrutiny standard for gender. And while that may have been good in the 70s, we've seen that there are still issues in the fight for women's equality, and we know today that we need strict scrutiny protections to enhance sex equality, gender equality, not just socially, but in the workforce and as such.
So help me out here. The point of the tiers of scrutiny was to allow groups who couldn't protect themselves through the ballot to try to protect to get their rights protected. If women have the right to vote and they make up more than a majority of the population, why can't they protect themselves from the ballot box without having heightened scrutiny or strict scrutiny?
Unfortunately, as of right now, men pretty much control the government and much of the courts. There are more men CEOs in the world named John than there are women CEOs. And with the ERA, it would allow for when women are lifted to the same level of scrutiny, to strict scrutiny for something as race, which also would now be lifted to sex, it would allow for women to be able to better protect themselves in a court of law, because their protections are going to be seen across the board, across the country, on the same level of race discrimination. And this is extremely important because as of right now, women are not protected under that because of the level of scrutiny they're currently in.
Yes, furthering my colleague's point, women's suffrage was instrumental in helping women rise to the level of men, but it still isn't enough, as we can see by the many instances where women are not equal to men today. Viagra isn't taxed, but tampons are. The wage gap between men is ridiculous, and women are earning 82 cents to the man's dollar. And even in athletics, women are not making the same amount of men. In a list of the top 100 highest paid athletes, Serena Williams was the only woman. CEOs, only 20%. of CEOs in our nation are women, and women are constantly being discriminated against in the workplace. They're enduring sexual harassment and domestic violence, and by raising women to strict scrutiny, they'll be better able to advance their rights, and they can seek remediation from their corporations to diminish this wage gap, and they will have more protections while fighting against this sexual discrimination and domestic violence that is currently plaguing our nation today, as we can see through the Me Too movement. So this is crucial to help.
I'd just like to add really quick that my colleagues intimated the point of strict scrutiny. The aspect of strict scrutiny, as you go up the ladder from rational basis to intermediate to strict scrutiny, the burden of proof that the petitioner has to show decreases. So jumping from intermediate scrutiny to strict scrutiny, women would have a lesser burden to show, and men too, under such a discrimination like Title VII. There was a 2011 Supreme Court case of Walmart Incorporated versus Dukes, in which 1.5 million women sought a class action lawsuit. And that class action lawsuit wasn't given then to them under intermediate scrutiny protections because it said it wasn't expansive enough. Under strict scrutiny, that many women would be able to petition as a class action lawsuit to show that the Walmart Incorporation had national policy that discriminated against them in the workforce.
Rita, you want in?
Yeah, but gosh, they've said it all. I'm so proud that you, well, okay, never mind. Excuse me. I missed the stop sign. They just cut me off.
Okay.
That's not right, but that's all right. You know, Donald has he's got what he's got, you know.
He's a guy. What can I say?
Exactly.
There we go.
Nice move, Slick.
More male oppression.
So comments from my fellow judges. What you got?
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting question. On the face of it, doesn't look that complicated, but then you start thinking hard and through the issues. You've got constitutional issues, you've got legal issues. And what I found interesting in your discussion in the 6 minutes was most of you went more to a cultural issues and analysis than a legal or a constitutional. I'm not clear really of the linkage, if any, between an Equal Rights Amendment and changes in cultural behavior. You allude to that, but I'm not sure how that's going to work, if it's going to work at all. On the other hand, that's a tough question for everybody, and part of the mix that makes this an interesting question and an interesting sort of evergreen topic. So because of that, I think you did a really nice job on this complicated set of values, both constitutional and social.
I know he was mentioning cultural, but I will say I thought that what Kate had to say when she was discussing Title IX and equal pay and those kinds of things, those are very personal to me, and I think they absolutely apply to this question because while they may be cultural in nature, they shouldn't be curring. And I will say just real quickly, there is something wrong with us having Title IX, and it's great that we all get to have women's sports teams, but if we're not willing to pay the coaches, but you know, minimum wage, but the men get millions, there's a problem. And that comes with equal pay, and it comes all the way up to the top. And thank goodness you all are going to be resolving the problem because we can't seem to handle it.
It's good stuff all around. Lots of good cases that were mentioned, Reed versus Reed, Craig versus Boren, some of the intermediate scrutiny cases that we liked. There are some old cases out there that you guys left to the side, and that's okay. The Bradford versus Illinois was one where I was waiting for you guys because you're from Illinois, but that's all right. It's all good. It's all good. So it's very, very interesting stuff. You do run into a problem, and this is not your fault. This is just the law's fault. You run into a problem with the tiers of scrutiny issue because in theory, women should be able to protect themselves with the right to vote, but structurally they're not really allowed to. And that's a hard one because you mentioned good statutes that were passed that are consistent with helping with equality, but somehow those haven't been enough. And whether the ERA will be enough is up in the air. And I think y'all recognize that. So it's hard to say we got to have an ERA while you're also not sure the ERA is going to do much more than the laws we already have. But like I say, that's not your problem. It will be your problem. But that's not the issue right now. I think you guys did a real strong job. So really do appreciate this conversation.
Right. Well done, folks. Nicely done. Nice going.